Hello, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Bright Opoku Ahenkra. Today, I'm here with my brother and colleague Abdulaziz Seidu, who owns this channel with me. Mr. Seidu is a PhD candidate at James Cook University here in Australia. For those of you who have not seen him before, he's with us today. So viewers, this is our first of many videos in which we will be interviewing students from low and middle income countries who migrated to Australia to come and study on scholarships. Most of these students have either finished their PhDs or their masters here in Australia and are either currently working in the country or working elsewhere. Our first guest for these sessions is Dr. Bupe Mwamba. Dr. Mwamba is originally from Zambia, which is in Africa, and completed her PhD in midwifery last year at the University of Technology, Sydney, here in Australia. She is currently a lecturer in nursing and midwifery at the University of South Australia, which is also in Australia. Thank you so much, Dr. Mwamba, for honoring our invitation. We are glad to have you on our channel. If you are watching us, kindly subscribe to our channel. Please don't forget to like and share our videos. Now let's go straight into the interview. So first of all, Dr. Mwamba, can you please kindly tell us something about yourself?
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm Dr. Mwamba from Zambia originally. And so I'm the seventh born in a family of 8, now 6 died. And so started my nursing journey in 2005 after completing a 3-year program from Lusaka Colleges of Nursing and Midwifery. By then it was Lusaka Schools of Nursing and Midwifery. The name has changed now. That's why I said Lusaka College of Nursing and Midwifery. And so after finishing my training, I graduated as the best obstetric nurse, and obstetric means you're the one that has been helping women giving birth and all of that. So something that I didn't even pay attention to, but I was just super shocked. Although every time we were on placement, people used to call us overzealous students because we were very much interested in learning everything that we were taught. And so that was our nickname in a good way, overzealous students. And so after that, I was posted to the neonatal intensive care unit at University Teaching Hospitals in Lusaka, Zambia, where I worked as a newly graduate. And although in our placement time was the time that we were students, we would have our 8 weeks of placement in the neonatal intensive care unit, which is very different after qualifying because then you're expected to do so much. And so I started my journey as a neonatal intensive care unit nurse in 2006, early 2006 after internship. And so it's from there where my passion for midwifery started, because I was already caring for babies, and the closest specialty that Zambia had at that time, which is different from today, was midwifery. And so after working for 3 years, I went for my midwifery training in another province, which was on the Copperbelt province of Zambia. And so I did my 1-year training as a midwife and went back to my usual hospital at University Teaching Hospital, where I worked in the maternity ward. So we call it a maternity ward because it would have both pregnant and non-pregnant women who are high risk and low risk. And so it used to be a very busy place, and I aimed all my skills whilst in that ward, because you would have women progressing for normal birth, and then you would have women that would have gone for a cesarean section or are pending a cesarean section, and then you would have postnatal women and high-risk women on medication. And considering a low and middle-income country, most of the time I would be alone, especially on night duty, if I don't have any part-time nurse helping me. But that built my background as a midwife. And so after working for a few months in that ward, I was promoted to act as a night superintendent, which was an administrative program where I worked from 2010 to 2013. So whilst working as a night superintendent, I was also working as a quality improvement nurse-midwife for Zambia's biggest non-governmental organization called Center for Infectious Diseases Research in Zambia. And so that was where my research journey started, basically. So as a quality improvement nurse-midwife, we were implementing new programs in rural Lusaka, which is a district called Chongwe. And so we were assigned about 27 healthcare facilities where we would implement a protocolized way of managing people that are sick, and we were calling it a better health outcome through mentoring and evaluation, which was a BOMA project. And so we worked on that project. I worked with the team, and we worked for that project for more than 3 years. And then in 2012, I was among the few health workers that were given an opportunity to go to the University of Alabama for a program that they were considering to train nurses and other clinicians from a lower middle income country in leadership. And so it was from there, when I was at University of Alabama in Birmingham, which is the United States of America, where my passion and objective to learn and actually improve myself from just being a registered nurse midwife to something higher started from that, because we were allocated mentors. So we had professors, and the professors looked like our age mates, you know, so it was like so alarming to see somebody who is your age calling themselves an associate professor or a professor. And so when I came back in 2012 from that trip, I started searching for programs of study. And because I wanted to specialize in midwifery and neonatal nursing science, which were my passion, I searched for programs of study and found one at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. And so 2013, January, I received my acceptance letter. And the journey wasn't very, very smooth, because like there was no funding associated with that trip. And then luckily enough, I had saved quite a lot of money, plus I had to sell my car and all of that. And so that was how my journey began. So 2013, I went to University of KwaZulu-Natal for what was called a Bachelor's of Nursing Advanced Practice Program in Midwifery and Neonatal Nursing Science. And so when I was going there, all I wanted was to just get my qualification, then get back to Zambia and continue with my work as a registered nurse, a midwife with a specialty in midwifery and neonatal nursing science. And so whilst at University of KwaZulu-Natal, you know, I was a full-time student. When I met my course coordinator, all she told me was that, Rupe, you're the only full-time student that we have, so you can get as many modules as possible according to the way you can manage, so that you can finish the program probably in 2 years instead of 3. And so I picked all the modules that I can afford and manage. And so I finished the program in 2 years. It also had clinical experience. And so it was in South Africa where I learned a lot of things because South Africa is as slightly advanced as it is here in Australia. A lot of things were similar. Like it was in South Africa where I learned to interpret a CTG, which we never had in Zambia. It was there again where I saw higher advanced machines like the oscillators in the neonatal intensive care unit. So that exposure prepared me for a later life when I relocated to Australia. And so I finished my program in 2 years, was on the Merit Award, received funding from the university. And so one thing that I've always told myself is that when I'm given an opportunity, I give it my entire being, my all, so that if there's money associated with whatever program, you can only achieve it or get it when you're actually among the merit students. And so I graduated with a distinction, which is called a cum laude in South Africa, and it was everyone news, which was beautiful. And so towards the end, I was given a position at University of Cape Town to go and study a Master of Philosophy in Maternal and Child Health, which was not a nursing or a midwifery degree. That was a subspecialty of public health. And so I jumped on it, and I loved it because it had modules that also prepared me for my PhD. So that was why I learned about biostatistics, which was actually one of my favorite modules, you know. After our end of year in 2015, I got 95% in biostatistics. My course convener was like, Wupe, who does that? What exactly is your problem? How can you get 95% in biostatistics? I'm like, you know, I'm somebody who was passionate about maths when I was growing up. So I think that was reviewed even at what I got in biostatistics. And so I loved the program at University of Cape Town. And the exposure that I had at University of Cape Town also helped me when I came here, because I worked as a liaison officer for not students, for workers, because I was now working as a master's student. They employed me as a site manager for a maternal and child health project under the Center for Infectious Diseases, Epidemiology and Research. And so whilst working as a manager, I was a liaison officer for recruitment. And so I learned about the recruitment processes of Cape Town, which are very similar to Sydney. I knew how to write good resumes that attract somebody's eyes whenever they open it and all of that. And so Cape Town was like a game changer. Like a lot of things that I learned there were applicable when I came to Australia. And so after finishing that master's degree, I went back to Zambia to give back to my country as a patriotic Zambian. Because earlier in my career, actually somebody told me to say, I see you working abroad. I actually said, oh my goodness, this person doesn't know me. Me, I'm a patriotic Zambian. I can make Zambia, I can make UK in Zambia. That's how I started working the two jobs, and it was working perfectly well. But then things worked perfectly well. Like I went to South Africa, went back, and again showed the entire department of neonatal intensive care unit where I was working to say, you know, advanced skills are what we need. And what happened when I went back was that I made sure that not even just me, even the people that knew that I had gone to advance my skills, who were working at the hospital, made sure that my presence was felt. Like I was on media. I was like, you know, they were inviting me for meetings, and I was talking about neonatal nursing and its importance and why we need qualified people to manage babies, and not just making it like a by the way thing. Because the way it was, if you're not trained in that, you are just sent to the ward, and then you learn the skills from people that have been working there for a long time. And so my being in the neonatal intensive care unit for just 4 months before I relocated to South Africa changed a lot of things. The mortality rate for neonates reduced. And so because of programs that I had implemented, and I was there like for the nurses and midwives whenever they were working. And so my house was closer to the hospital. So if they needed anything, they would call me at any time. Even at midnight, I would go to the ward. And that's how dedicated I am at what I do. And so after I left the hospital, you know, I felt bad because I was the only neonatal nurse at that time trained. And so when I left, I was asked to say, what else can we do as a country? So what I suggested was that we need to have skilled people. We need to train people. And so we started working on a curriculum. So I work hand in hand with a neonatologist who was also trained in Cape Town. And so she's been my go-to person with regards to issues with regards to babies. And we started a non-governmental organization, which we call Newborn Support Zambia, the two of us. And so we worked on the curriculum. So we have 2 curriculums now running. We have had graduates already graduated, which is a diploma in neonatal nursing and a master's degree in neonatal nursing, which were not there. Everything else was influenced by my presence there. And so each time that we are doing whatever we're doing, we need to always consider where we're coming from. And so, yeah, I relocated to Australia in 2018 for my PhD. And so, how far should I go? Yeah, so relocated to Australia in 2018. And so my application process for my PhD was made easier because I already had a research in mind, which is very different from many other students. So in 2016, whilst studying for a master's, I won a grant from the International Confederation of Midwives, and using that grant, I implemented education sessions throughout the 7 provinces of Zambia, where I was educating or just trying to solicit information with regards to delayed umbilical cord clamping practices. And so after finishing my master's and after starting my PhD, I looked back and said, this has been more than 3 years after the first project that I undertook. And so I wanted to see if there's been any differences in terms of anemia actually. So my first project when I wrote my concept note was looking at a comparative study of the before delayed cord clamping practices years and after. But then it changed because there was no information, there was no data with regards to the practice. And so it's changed, and I had to do a prevalence study to check if midwives and obstetricians were practicing. And especially that the students that I had interacted with were actually in a one-year program. So 2 years down the line, you expect them to have influenced the practice, but that wasn't the case. And so when I was in Cape Town, I was like probably searching for universities, and I wanted a university that was going to offer me a PhD in maternal and child health. And so at University of Cape Town, I was offered a PhD in health medical education. And so when I met my prospective supervisor before I left, his first question was, Bupe, I know you're very passionate about mothers and babies. Are you sure if you get a PhD in maternal and child health, will you not leave this program? I just looked at him, but in my heart, I was like, you're right. And it was a well-funded program as well, but it was medical education. And I already had an intervention that I wanted to change, actually, because I was teaching medical students whilst at University of Cape Town. And so through that facilitation, which I had and interactions with students, I came to learn about a program that I wanted to change. They call it an intervention program. And so if you all enroll in a medical program, and then if you're not doing so well, they put you in an intervention class. And so you start going slower than everybody else. And so like for me, it was just something that prompted me to say, what type of doctors are we training if people are going to be in this class where they are called, they are in an intervention class, and then they'll graduate later than others? You know, what implication would that have mentally to them and even to the people that are seeing them? And so everybody loved my research topic that I wanted to pursue. But when I got my maternal and child health a PhD scholarship at University of Cape Town or University of Technology Sydney, I was like, oh no, I just have to go for my passion. And that's how I changed my career from medical education to a degree in midwifery. And so I met Professor Caroline first time before I even came here at a conference in Toronto. So again, International Confederation of Midwives convened a conference, and I was there presenting because I was an awardee at that conference. And so I checked through Caroline, whom I was communicating with, was presenting as well. And so I attended that her presentation as a distinguished professor, and she was also the director for the World Health Organization Collaborating Center at University of Technology Sydney then. And so we chatted and all of that. By then I hadn't yet received my scholarship. And all she told me was that, Bupe, you are not going to come to Australia if you are not going to get full funding. It's very expensive here. And so she was very plain, and she told me just like that when I was working on the papers and everything. So when I met her face to face, she was like, have they communicated? Have you received your funding as yet? I'm like, no, not yet. So she was like, okay, keep me informed and posted. And so later on, I followed up with an email telling her that I haven't yet received any communication with regards to funding. And so she followed it up, and it was granted. And so one thing that I can tell prospective students is that they need to look at the supervisors that they would want to have as their supervisors, because there are people that are very helpful, and there are people that will direct you and guide you in the right way. And so it is very important in the preliminaries when you're searching to search and see the people that you are trying to list as your prospective supervisors, because they play a very, very big role even in your scholarship awards that you would get. Yeah, so that was how my journey started in 2018, April.
All right. That is a very elaborate and consistent journey. So, Dr. Mwamba, from what I am gathering, you had already applied to the University of Technology, Sydney, before you went for the conference at Toronto. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yes.
Okay. So how did you get to know about Australia before the conference?
Wow. I think when I was searching for a program of study, I wasn't focusing on a country. I was looking at the program. So like when I was searching for a degree in midwifery and neonatal nursing science, I was searching for the program and not for the country. You know what I mean? So when I was searching for a PhD in maternal and child health, I wasn't searching a country, I was searching the program.
Oh, okay.
And so when I got the information, and so when I searched the program, University of Technology Sydney popped up. And then I looked at the head of department and the person that I can contact. And by then it was Professor Caroline Homer. And so I sent an email asking for a prospective supervisor, because when you're applying, they need that. And so that was how my contact with Professor Caroline started. And so she asked me to say I should send a concept note to her before she can actually allocate me a supervisor. And so when I sent through my concept note, she got back to me and said she will actually supervise me. So that was how our journey started.
Oh, okay. So apart from, yeah, I understand you searched your program and the University of Technology Sydney popped up. Were there other universities you contacted and then you got rejections or something before getting approval from the University of Technology Sydney?
I think the other university that popped up was University of Auckland. So they had a different study, though. They were looking at prematurity and its impact, something like that. They had already designed proposals. So you just pick one and then go for it. And so for them, I only had one meeting with them where we met like on Zoom and discussed my intentions and my research aspirations. And so after the first meeting, they asked for my master's supervisor's contact, which I did. And so thereafter they got back, not sure whatever conversation they had then, because I was just in my first year master's, which was a 3-year program. So they got back, they were like, okay, we kindly contact us when you're closer to the finishing of your program. And so that was how our conversation stopped. But with the University of Technology Sydney, I started communicating, I think in 2016, when I was in my second year of my master's. And so we continued having those conversations, and the concept note, after she read it, she was like, I'll supervise you. And like we logged in, I already logged in my the professor as my primary supervisor when I was applying later in 2016, I think towards the end. So that was, it was only 2 universities, plus University of Cape Town, where I already had a PhD granted. So I'd already applied at University of Cape Town, because University of Cape Town was like my option 2. If I don't get in maternal and child health PhDs, then I'll get onto my medical education PhD so that I can change the intervention class.
All right. So this is clear now. Can you kindly tell us about the processes you went through to gain the scholarship? So first of all, you have mentioned that you submitted a concept note to your supervisor, and then there were other steps you might have gone through to secure the scholarship. Can you briefly tell us about those steps?
So first of all, when applying, like after securing the primary supervisor, when putting in the application, because that's priority, you also apply for a PhD scholarship. So I ticked all the boxes that were there, which was the type of scholarship that I wanted. And so that was the only thing that I did. And then the entire process of like following up was done by my supervisor. After she, all I was doing was waiting on the communication. So there was not much that I physically did besides ticking the boxes when putting the application in. You know what I mean?
I'm sure you might have worked on a proposal, a CV, and probably your transcripts. Did you get all these together before submitting the application?
Yes, because when you're submitting for study, you have to attach all the necessary documents. So because the application process gives us that guideline where you have to attach all the necessary documents, including all the transcripts and all the recommendations. I don't know if there were recommendations and all of that. So, and it has been long. How many years? More than 5 years. I'm trying to recall that information. Right. So I did attach all my certificates, all my degrees and everything, and the transcripts. Everything was attached, including my curriculum vitae, well written, the South African way, which is what they want here, where you use action verbs and all of that. Yeah, so I did all of that.
Oh, all right. That's
Mhm.
interesting. So it means you did not apply through any agent, you did everything yourself, and then your supervisor took it up from there, right?
Yes, so I did everything from A to Z myself. And so my supervisor just did the follow-up after discovering that months were passing without any communication with regards to that. And I think one thing that we need to know is that there are two types of scholarships that are offered. So there's the university scholarship, which is the one that you apply for when you are putting in your PhD application or your master's. And then there's also other PhD grants that you can apply for, which are not attached to the university. And so probably the process could be different, but for the one that you apply for the university, like a university scholarship, all you do is tick the boxes, submit all the required documents, and then wait for them to get back to you. Yeah.
I see. I know you have mentioned some of them, proposals, CV, transcripts. Are there other vital information or documents that PhD candidate or prospective PhD candidate need to get for their application here in Australia?
Wow, I'm trying to recall. It has been long. I don't think so. Besides the academic qualifications, I think that's the most important part because that's what they look for. And probably a cover letter why you proposed the concept notes that you're working on. And so that is something that is like a supporting document to your curriculum vitae or resume. And so, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that is extra besides your academic qualifications. And your work experience, I think, also because of it being a professional PhD. Yeah.
All right. I am aware that some universities here in Australia emphasize publications. So when you are applying, they will ask you to attach a list of publications that you have. Was that the case for
Yes.
you?
Yes. So that, I forgot. It has been long. Please forgive me.
That's all right.
Yes. So I remember Professor Caroline asked for the concept note and the publications. And I think I also attached that one. And luckily enough, when we worked on the project for the one that I went around colleges of midwifery in Zambia, where I was implementing the project, we actually wrote a publication and it was accepted with my co-authors from America. So we call it a training program against a training program for American College of Nurse-Midwives and Zambia midwives. And so I was part and parcel of that. And so we worked on a publication. So I had one publication at that time, but my work experience and everything else, including all my academic transcripts, also played a very big role in me securing both the PhD and the position.
All right. So considering your time in 2018 and now, apart from work experience, how many publications would you say an individual would need now in order to secure scholarships for in Australia?
Well, so first of all, the one thing that we need to know for Australia is that even if you don't have a master's degree, you can secure a PhD program. And so publications are not like so much a thing. So even one, like if you have one as your minimum and your prospective supervisor has seen your potential, you can still be given a position. So it's everything else, including at least one publication. I had one publication then. So that is me in 2017, when I was concluding my application. Having many or having so many just depends on everything else adding together. So it's a subtotal. So it's what we call a sum total of everything. So your work experience, your academic journey, your publication, if you have. So if you have one or you're working towards 2 and 3, the number doesn't matter. Everything else adds up to you being given a position.
All right. Thank you
and
so
it depends
much.
on
Yeah, go ahead.
It depends on the, yes. So if you're a nurse and a midwife, there are certain things that they need you to have, like your work experience is cardinal, and how you've been like performing academically. Because like for me, I had a cum laude, actually having a cum laude can actually make you enter into a PhD program without a master's, because that's a distinction. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what matters is your background and everything else put together, plus a publication or more, if possible.
So it means that your academic excellence is very key.
Yes, absolutely. There has to be, you have to show that you are somebody that can be trusted with, especially a PhD, which is not something that is easy. And I'm sure you can attest to that. Yeah. So they need to see your academic strength, muscle. How strong are you academically? Yeah.
All right. I perfectly understand. Thank you so much, Dr. Mwamba. These are very useful information. Viewers, if we have watched us up to this point, we appreciate your time a lot. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Kindly like and share this video. I will end here for my brother and colleague, Mr. Seidu, to continue with the interview. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mwamba. Your journey has been an interesting one. Now, let's look at the time you got to Australia. When you started your program, tell us your experience.
Wow. So I loved it, first of all. All I wanted when I left Zambia was to enter Australia, and then everything else was going to be taken care of. So by the way, when I was leaving Zambia I left Zambia on 7th of April, because the agent I was working with, there's a time when you are told to say now you have to use an agent, the university approved agent, to progress. And so the agent I was using was in Nigeria. And so I remember very well, I finished work from my hospital after 4, and then whilst going home, I just received a call to say, Bupe, your scholarship end date, which you're supposed to enroll, is on 9th of April. And so that was on the 6th. And so Zambia to Australia takes 2 days. And so finished work, not even a lot of people knew at work to say I was now planning to leave, prepared the flights and all of that. Saturday night, I left Zambia to Australia so that I can meet the enrollment date, which was 9th. And so I didn't worry about accommodation, because imagine you are reminded on Friday, you have to be in Australia on Monday, no time to search for accommodation, and who will give you. And so I just left. I was like, and coming from Cape Town, where the university actually prioritizes health science students, I thought it was similar, coming from Cape Town, where you would go to the university because you are under the Faculty of Health Science, accommodation is well arranged, all you do is report and then get all the keys and all of that. So I was coming with that notion, and then it was surprising there was nothing. And I think maybe I only had $300, considering our Zambian kwacha, changing it to Australian dollar. I think I landed with $300 with no accommodation. Anyway, all I wanted was to enter Australia, and I entered, and I was super excited. And so my journey began with no accommodation, but I found somebody who helped me, and that was where I stayed. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, let me ask about your relationship with your supervisors when you commenced your program. How has it been, or how was it?
Okay, so reported on 9th, and then I was told to say my supervisor was actually not going to be around because she had just accepted another position at Bennett Institute. And she's a person that I had known we were chatting for more than 2 years. I met her face to face. And so she told me that I'll leave you in the hands of another professor who was taking over from her. And so started a journey with people that probably didn't even know me. And so started with the professor who later left again for Newcastle. And so I had my primary supervisor leaving before I started. But she was there, she was on my candidature. I never removed her from my list of supervisors. And so I would consult here, and then she would come in for my meetings. And then even when I was doing my confirmation of candidature, she actually came to attend that. And so after the second professor left, I was left with another team. And then things just changed. You know, one thing that I always encourage people is that a student supervisor process is similar to the relationship that we have even in real life. You know,
Right.
today you meet this man, you are so much in love and all rosy and everything. Tomorrow you're like, we're divorcing. You know, it's something that cannot even be explained, but it's very similar to the PhD student supervisor relationship. Relationships can fail, and you can know to say this is not going anywhere. You know, just like in a relationship, you can know to say there's something wrong here. And so I think 2019, because I did my candidature in 2018 November, then 2019, when I had another primary supervisor, things were not just moving the way I anticipated. And having had my Master of Philosophy experience, I was like, and one thing that I did when I was at University of Cape Town was that I was a student leader. And so I was dealing with a lot of student issues with regards to student supervisor relationships. And so I was already preview with what may go wrong. And so there was no progress. Like I kept on working on things. Feedback would come in after feedback, like no progress. And if you're a supervisor and you're giving a student feedback throughout, they cannot progress because you have to move. If you tell a student to work on the introduction, they work on that. When they send you that, you read it. And if they have to be things to change, they change. And then you progress to the methods and all of that. But if you are just working on the introduction throughout, feedback after feedback, there is no progress. And then I was told to say, hey, Pupe, you can't attend conferences. You can't attend these students. We used to have Faculty of Health Sciences. What were we calling it? Faculty of Health symposiums, like every 6 months for full-time students and all of that. And so in this, my relationship, which wasn't working properly, I was told to say, I can't attend those symposiums. They are actually HDR symposiums, that they were actually delaying my progress. And then I had a conference in Namibia where I wanted to go. I was told you can't travel because it will delay your progress. But I knew in my heart to say, attending the conference and all these symposiums will not delay my progress. What delays somebody's progress is what your supervisor, you as a supervisor's feedback and input. How are you progressing? How are you moving? Because everything else borders on the supervisor for a student to progress. Right. And so I actually went to our director because, you know, remember, I'm coming from a background where I know that student supervisor relationships can fail. Yep. And so I knew what I was going through. And so I met our director, HDR students director. I told them that I wanted to change supervisors. I don't even know why. And I think it was very interesting because that was early in the change of the third primary supervisor. Okay. So we talked to it. He was like, no, I think it will work out, blah, blah, blah. So I continued, you know, I had feedback after feedback, 2020 feedback after feedback. I had collected data and I started writing. That was my quantitative study, which was the first one, like surveys, and all the feedback came back and I already started analyzing and all of that. But there was no progress, you know, like you're still just with your stage 1 assessment, which you did in 2018. 2019 ended, I was told to say, I can't do because I didn't have a publication from my study. So that's what my panel told me. Then I was like, okay, so kept on working on this study, then working on the second part of the study, which was an addition and all of that. And so, you know, 2020 ended without me doing my second stage. And I knew to say things were not just right. And you know, the way we work hard. And if there's somebody who works hard on this earth, I think I'm one of them. Because my focus when I've been given an opportunity is to make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do for that. And so all my energies, imagine you're working so tirelessly, but then the results are not showing. And so one thing that I noticed was that every Thursday when I'm going for the meeting, I would have like tachycardia, like you are resting and then you are sleeping, but you're hearing the sound of your heart. And you're not supposed to hear your heart sound. So I knew, I was like, I think there's something wrong here, which is maybe it's this thing they call anxiety and all of that. But I wasn't showing because my life is busy. So
interesting. Right.
Yeah, but I was feeling it. Yeah, so 2021, because now I was like, I think there's no progress. Or first of all, before crossing 2021, I went to church. You know, besides just being myself, I pray a lot. So I used to go for retreats for the retreat center. And so I went to pray. And then my focus was that, please, God, if there's anyone who's not supposed to be on my supervisory panel, please remove them. So that was my prayer for that weekend. Went back, we crossed over to 2021 with my stage 1 only, not stage 2. And that was my last year. And so I just received an email from one of the senior supervisors. She was like, we want to meet and discuss the way forward and blah, 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 and all of that. So we met, and then they told me to say, that was, I think, February or early March.
Okay.
We just realized that probably we are not the right team to take you through your submission. So we are going to terminate this student supervisor relationship. At first I was heartbroken, but then I had peace. So it was very funny. Like, you know, you are feeling like, oh, but then deep down you're like, yes.
Yeah.
So that was how our relationship with that supervisory team ended.
I see.
2021.
Okay. Very elaborate explanation. What about your team that supervised you till completion? Can you tell me something brief about that experience also?
Perfect. So now they're hunting for another supervisor to take me through to the final line started. And so I had meetings with our HDR director here and then trying to search for people and all of that. It was not yielding positive results. Then we were like, oh, what about going back to Professor Caroline Homer? Remember Professor Caroline Homer who had left?
Mm-hmm.
So went back to her and it worked out. She was like, yeah, very fine.
Wow.
That's how she came back to supervise me. And so we had clear objectives for our supervisory meeting, and the progress was very, very, like everything else changed. We became very productive. She would give me feedback after feedback and, you know, like progressive feedback, content-based. And so in 2021, I managed to do 2 assessments that I never did. So my stage 2 assessment and my stage 3. And then we already had discussed to say we only involve the UTS supervisor after my stage 3, which we did. And so the document, she only reviewed the document afterwards. And so because I had to leave one of the supervisors on the panel, because Professor Caroline isn't at UTS anymore as full-time. Yeah, so that was how it all happened. And so Professor Caroline came back. Life continued as usual, as happy as possible, and everything else was worked out like according to the plan. Like as a Christian, from a Christian perspective, I think God wanted me to just continue with Professor Caroline and Professor Caroline to be on my documents. And so, yeah, that's how it all happened. So
I see. What about your relationship with your colleagues? Tell me something about that, your experiences with your colleagues as well.
Oh, lovely. So, wow, it was beautiful though. And so we had moments like we used to have our own space, the HDR space. And so we would meet as HDR students from different faculties. And so sometimes we would have our meals together and just laughs together. And, you know, one thing that I've learned in life is that whenever you're like, especially for PhD students, you cannot do it as an island. You need people to talk to and just encourage each other, because when you see your friend trying to drown, you have to pull them out and say, keep on going, we're all together in this, you know what I mean? And so so we worked together as a team, and I still hold dear at heart everybody else that supported me. And you know, some people just need you to be there and to provide a listening ear. And so there were people that will be there just to listen, and I was also one of those people that will be there to listen. And then if need be, if somebody needs some direction, I'll be there. Like one of them was like, no, they want me to go part-time. Wupe, what do you think? Me, I was like, no, you can't go part-time. You have to finish as a full-time. You know what I mean?
I know, right?
Be there for one another.
That's fantastic. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's look at educational facilities. moving from your country to South Africa, and then from South Africa to Australia. Let's look at the educational facilities that's within your university.
Okay, so comparing all the places where I've studied.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, Zambia is a lower middle income country, which cannot be compared to South Africa. But when I was training as a registered nurse and midwife, we did have some mannequins and all of that, which are very, very useful at that time. Then when I went to South Africa, like there was advanced machinery there. It was beautiful. Like you would see things that you haven't seen in Zambia, like oscillators and even like the use of the CTG and any like all the advanced machines that are there. Like one of the hospitals I worked in South Africa was a cardiac specialist hospital. And so there I learned how to manage pregnant women with cardiac disease, like with issues with the heart. And so because it's very common and because they are followed up, one thing that I loved about South Africa is that their system is very similar to Sydney, especially in Cape Town. KwaZulu-Natal, one of the hospitals where I worked, which was the cardiac hospital, is very advanced with advanced machinery. And you learn a lot about things that like like in Zambia, I didn't come across any of the women that had any heart problems. But in South Africa, there's that specialized hospital. And so you learn how to manage them and what you're supposed to do as a midwife or a nurse that is managing those women. And so South Africa prepared me because when I came here, like my registration as a nurse and midwife, they looked at where I'm coming from. So if you're coming from any other country besides South Africa as a nurse and midwife, they will only register you as a nurse. They won't register you as a midwife. But because I came in from, I spent my years in South Africa, like 5 years. And in the 5 years, I worked in the hospitals. Australia knows to say South Africa is advanced. And so they are on the list. And so you easily get registered here than if I just came in from Zambia with my Zambian qualification. Although like the scope of practice is like broader for somebody who is trained in a lower middle income country in comparison to here, because you have to be certified to do certain things, like they have to accredit you to do a hip assessment, you have to accredit you for you to intubate and all of that. In Zambia, once you qualify, you're expected to know everything. So when you're sent to a health facility where you're the everything, you need to know how to resuscitate an adult, a baby, and all of that, and give them medication, and so you're everything. And so the scope of practice is like broader in a lower middle-income country in comparison to here, where people have to be certified. But for me, like having worked as a specialist midwife, my scope was broader, and so I loved my job in hospitals. So
now I'm sorry to interject.
No, it's okay.
Let's talk specifically about the educational facilities or learning facilities in your school here in Australia.
Wow, so it's advanced. It's a high income country, so we expect the facilities to be definitely different, and the exposure is very different. And so the computer labs and the free Wi-Fi and the spaces that we have, like the library where you can go and borrow a computer if you don't have, and all of that. So of course, the facilities are very different in a high income country in comparison to a lower middle income country. Although like looking back, like coming from Cape Town, we also had similar facilities. Like I was staying in a residence at University of Cape Town, which had a computer lab. Like you like if you're staying in that residence, you didn't need to go to campus to go and do your assignment. You have a residence with computers. You just need to go and sit there and work in your residence. And so that is the other context when I look at other like University of Cape Town, even University of KwaZulu-Natal was also advanced, although like there are differences, because when you go to KwaZulu-Natal, that's a different province, and it is more for the Zulus and all of that, and then Cape Town being very advanced and all of that. But we also had the facilities that are advanced there, like the computer labs were excellent, and even just the student labs were excellent as well. And so so for us as HDR students, the equipment or the things or the machineries that we just needed were the computer space, the spaces. So the offices, the computers, the Wi-Fi's, and the tea rooms, and all of that, everything was supplied. And yeah, it was beautiful. Forever indebted to the university.
That's nice. You've already touched on some support services that you resorted to on campus when you were facing challenges with your supervisory team and others. Apart from those you shared, are there other support services available on your campus when you were studying?
Yes. Yes, there are plenty. Like I was part and parcel of peer educators and peer advisors. So there's what is called helps.
Okay.
Something to do with writing. I can't remember now. I'm getting old. Age is catching up with me. Yeah, so I was part and parcel of the helps team. So in the helps department, we were actually helping students with the writing and even speaking, because we have a lot of international students coming in that may not be as fluent as the locals. And so guiding them, like having conversations, like we were having conversations, it used to be an online for the speaking activities. And so you go into breakouts, just discuss about anything so that somebody can be able to talk through, and which improves their speaking, capabilities. Yeah, and so there was also the writing component where people would submit their assignments, and then they need somebody to proofread and then just guide them with regards to what they've written. And so that was one service. And then there was also there's also counseling. There is even now. So there's also counseling, like if you're going through issues, if you want to meet a psychologist or a counselor and all of that, people are able to go there and seek those services. But I never went to any of those. I had my own inbuilt counseling and psychology.
Okay.
Yeah, but they are there. They are free of charge for students.
That's nice. That's nice. Thank you so much. Now let's look at working and studying in Australia. Your experiences when you were students. Were you working on campus or off campus, or what opportunities exist for students studying in Australia?
Okay, so students are allowed to work. And so for me, my first job was a project, I was working as a project officer where I was auditing clinical practice for clinicians working in the rehabilitation department at Sydney Children's Hospitals Network, which are 2 hospitals. So yeah, I attended interviews, and I was one that was given the position because I had what it takes. They wanted somebody who would be able to audit a practice. And like I've done auditing before, so I had experience. And so for you to enter like a system, or for you to have a job, a formal job like the one that I had, you need to have the experience that they need, and you need to show that when you go for interviews, and your resume and your cover letter and everything, every document that you have should speak to that. And so one of the modules that I did was evaluation of healthcare programs in South Africa. And I evaluated the PMTCT program, which was looking at the option B, mother-to-child transmission treatment. So PMTCT is prevention of mother-to-child transmission. And so the drug that they were giving at the hospital was option B. And so process evaluation of that treatment was what the project that I undertook when I was doing my advanced degree in midwifery and neonatal nursing science. And so I had that exposure to evaluation of programs and auditing. And so it was easy to get that job. And so I evaluated the clinicians. And so after that, I registered as a nurse-midwife because I was anticipating to have a busy year after, because that was my 2018 job. Yep. It was a 1-year contract because it was a quality improvement project that the department was working on. And so after that, I got my registration, and so did my first interview at Royal Hospital for Women, and I was a successful candidate. After the interview, I was told to say, okay, wait for us, we'll take you around and orient you where the hospital is and all of that. So that was my first hospital interview that I did, and I got it as a casual because I was looking at my research journey to say probably I'll be after 2019 I'll get busier with data analysis and all of that. So I didn't want to have a part-time. The research project role was a part-time role for 3 days a week, and so I would spend 2 days doing my study. And so that was how I got into the hospital for the first time, then did another interview at Royal North Shore Hospital. Again, after the interview, they took me around and all of that. And so I had 2 casual jobs. And so I was doing shifts during the weekend most of the time after my project officer role. Yeah, so working is allowed and you have to manage your own time.
Okay, so talking about managing your own time, very good point. How are you managing your time? Combining your studies with work, and then coupled with the fact that initially you had a few challenges with your supervisory team. How are you combining that?
Wow, interesting. So I'll do my casual shifts during the weekend. So Saturday and Sundays. And then when things are better, when I'm waiting for feedback, I'll do some maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, and then rest like that. So just one like few days shifts per week, and then ensuring that if I do a shift when I get home, I have to spend much of my time on my academic work because that's the core business that I was doing then. Yeah, so I managed to do all of that. So weekends and sometimes when I'm waiting for feedback, then I would do some few shifts.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there any other thing you'd like to share with our dear viewers?
No, I think I've talked a lot. Have I left out anything?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mwamba, for your time and sharing this useful insight with us. We may get in touch with you again for us to talk specifically about studying and working in Australia, and then the job prospects that are available to students after completion, and then how to apply, how the requirements, how to even formulate your CV, or how to go about applications, job applications in this, So if you are watching this video, we really appreciate your time. Kindly send your questions and comments to the comment section. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to our channel. Like and share our video widely. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.